Today, I'm going to be showing you guys 5 super fire sampling tricks. Each tip is just as fire as the last one, so, watch them all. Seriously, every last one of them. Every minute of this video, or else nothing's going to happen. But, you're going to learn some dope stuff. So let's get into it. So these first 2 sampling tricks I'm going to show you guys here today are all about kind of keeping your beats interesting when you do sample, as that's an area I see a lot of people struggle with. They'll like create one chop, have it playing throughout the entire beat without any like change ups or anything like that. Let me just play you guys a little bit of my beat City. I'm going to show you guys the visualizer, and then we'll actually get into FL, and I'll tell you guys exactly what I did.
Dylan XO.
First thing I recommend doing is either one, whatever your original sample is that you get, keep the original sample that you haven't like chopped up or anything, or you can go ahead and create maybe a little basic sample chop that you'll use just at the beginning, or actually go in and chop up later. So that's what I actually did here. Like right here, just for this intro part, it's just a little bit of a sample that I chopped up, pretty basic overall. Then one of the simplest way to kind of change up that sample is just to convert it into an audio file. Just highlight everything and go to Control-Alt-C, convert it into an audio file. Then you're just going to drag the sample into Fruity Slicer. Go to this blade tool, click beat, and then you can just add maybe like 1 or 2 little chops here and there. Just make sure you do it in similar spots and kind of just listen through to see what sounds good. As the listener is already used to the original sample, it kind of will ease them into the change up a little bit better.
Dylan XO.
Now, the next thing you can do in terms of your chops and keeping it interesting is if we just go right here and look at this first vocal chop, you notice it starts on the 1 beat here. Then we'll go to the second chop right here. Typically, I would start the chop on the 1 beat. That's gonna lead to the smoothest transition. But starting on something like the 2, 3, or 4 typically will sound pretty good, as it's not too abrupt of a change. This isn't like a rule or anything. It's really up to you on what you decide to do and what ends up sounding good. This is just a good kind of starting place. And then if we look throughout this beat, I'm just going in between the different chops and kind of keeping it interesting. So here's how this sounds as it transitions into this next chop right here. Now the next thing that you can do, and this is really easy, and I ended up doing it in this song as well. Copy your sample over, convert it into an audio file, stack it on top of the other sample, go into the pitch setting, pitch it all the way up, and that's just going to make it sound a little bit brighter and more full. Then you just want to go in, put it on your mixer track, kind of just play with the high end and listen through and see where it sounds good and like how much you want to cut out. You can also go in and throw on a couple effects like distortion or something like that. That way, first chorus or whatever part of your beat you're doing, as it progresses, is going to sound a little bit different, and it's not going to be like overly redundant or anything like that. Alright, so next tip I'm going to show you is actually one I use on my new song, Ego. It's a super fire tip, very easy. So let me just play the song really quick, and then I'll explain what I did and what exactly is the trick, because this one I use like 50 different tricks. I mean, look at this rack right here. But it's a very, very simple trick. Don't let that freak you out or anything. all I did right here to create like a really big impact when everything drops is you just want to cut out your sample in certain parts. So look right here, I just cut it out right here, and then I cut it out in the same spot over here, and then it's kind of just all throughout over here. A real key that you have to do to make it have like the biggest impact is you want to do everything with like your drums and your bass line or your 808s. And so to really give it a big impact, I ended up just cutting out everything right here, etc. It's kind of like a couple part trick. Here's a beat that I used it in. Then I'm just going to show you exactly how you can kind of achieve this sound.
Dylan XO.
That was a beat that I made in my Cooking Up with Dylan series, which I'm kind of transitioning into my like Road to Becoming an Artist series, which you should definitely check out. I'll link that video at the end of this video. This is the original vocal sample that I used it from. First thing you're going to want to do is pull in some sort of vocal sample. Click on this little magnet right here. We're just going to use half a beat because that's what I already did in this beat. Like, why would I, use something else? Pick out like a good little vocal sample. In this case, this is the first one that I ended up using. If you want it to sound a little bit more full, what you're going to want to do is just duplicate that sample. Go right here, go to Make Unique, and then you're just going to want to pitch one of them up or down. And then also, if you want them to sound a little bit smoother as they kind of like run into each other, what you're going to want to do is go here and just click smooth bleeding, or you can also use generic bleeding, which will be like less exaggerated. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you can either find a chop that just works, which is what I did in this situation right here. This was another vocal sound from this chop and it just ended up sounding good. And so that's what I ended up doing right here. But over here on the second half, this is actually the exact same chops. So I just went over here and duplicated this. Now, if you can't find another chop within whatever you sampled that sounds really good with the, the first chop that we chopped up, you can do, and what I actually did for the second half right here, I just basically copied all of this over right here. And then what you're going to go into is you're going to go into your pitch, and you just kind of play around with the pitches right here. And you want to make sure in the top left corner, you'll see the cents right here. You want to always make sure you're going up or down by 100 because that's going to be like one key. And so you're just going to want to kind of play in here and look for stuff that sounds good. One thing that will typically sound pretty good is if you move it up or down 500 cents. So that's just actually what I ended up doing right here, and that's how I got these other notes. Now, a few important pointers, if you do decide to do this, whatever chop you use, you typically want to pick something that's just like one kind of short sound, almost like a one-shot kind of sound. Then the last thing I would mention, chop up your bass line in the same way, as it's going to have a lot more impact when those chops hit. So let's just listen right here with the bass line. So this last tip of the day is a very dope one, really endless possibilities with this one. That is going to be using automation on your samples. I'm going to show you guys a few of my favorite ways to do it. So there's a lot of things you can do that will completely change how the sample sounds. So the first thing you can do is you can just automate the volumes. Right click, go to automate right here, and then do volume. Pull this down like right here, so I don't have to do this 20 different times. And just go in and do something like this. Do all kinds of different shapes, just make sure it's somewhat consistent in what you do. Next little automation thing that I like to do is click on the sample, F9 to get here, Control L. And then let's just choose an effect. Let's do EQ. For example, we cut out a bunch of highs right here, and we can either press record and just play with this as it goes, or you can also go here and go to create automation clip. This is just gonna turn off the effect and on. And we could do something like this. We could do it with something like a flanger. Sounds kind of cool. Now you could use this with free reverb, but I think it'll sound cooler if I do it with like Valhalla Vintage Verb. Like put a crazy amount of reverb on it right here, and then let's just play around and see what sounds good here. Try something like this. Sounds sick. But yeah, that is it, guys. Check out my new series, first episode right here.